Okay, let's unpack this a bit. When you hear the word intelligence, what really comes to mind? Is it just, acing a math test, speaking 5 languages? Or is there maybe something more, something that street smarts or like artistic talent might show us? Today, we're diving into a whole stack of sources that really challenge and expand how we think about being intelligent. Our mission, to explore all these diverse forms, try to explain and label the different types of intelligences out there, and crucially, help you maybe figure out what kind of intelligence you lean towards. Get ready to rethink what smart actually means.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? How our whole understanding of intelligence it's really evolved. For a long, long time, the focus was super narrow, usually just tied to a score on a test. But as we're going to see, researchers kept pushing those boundaries. And what they found is this much richer, more complex picture of our cognitive abilities.
Right. And that journey, that quest to really understand intelligence, it sort of kicked off way back in the late 19th century. You had figures like Francis Galton. People often call him the father of studying individual differences. And he actually tried to measure intelligence directly, things like reaction times or how quickly someone could tell the difference between, say, 2 weights. He even made a distinction, didn't he, between intelligence A and B.
Exactly. Intelligence A was your sort of inherent raw capability. And intelligence B was how that capability actually showed up in your everyday life. And that very direct kind of pragmatic approach, it really set the stage for Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon later on, around 1905. The French Ministry of Public Instruction basically asked Binet, hey, can you figure out a way to identify kids who need extra help in school?
So it wasn't about ranking everyone, it was about specific needs.
Precisely. They created the Binet-Simon scale, the first really practical intelligence test. And it used like 30 short tasks, stuff related to everyday life, following instructions, naming body parts, counting coins. And they were arranged by difficulty, matching up with developmental stages. The goal was identification for support, not just slapping a number on someone.
But then things shifted, right? With the Stanford Binet and IQ, that seems like a huge turning point. Lewis Terman adapted Binet's test in, 1916? And then came the intelligence quotient IQ. Suddenly, we're moving from identifying needs to giving people this single, powerful score for intelligence. That must have had massive implications.
Oh, absolutely. The IQ formula, which Wilhelm Stern developed, was mental age over chronological age times 100. Worked okay for kids, helped standardize things, but less useful for adults. And that focus on a single score, it got even stronger in the 1920s with Charles Spearman.
Spearman and G.
Yes, G, general ability. Spearman noticed something interesting. People who did well on one kind of mental test, maybe vocabulary,
they tended to do well on others too, like math puzzles.
Exactly. That suggested to him there was this single underlying mental energy, this G factor that you need for all mental tasks.
Yeah.
And honestly, even today, most researchers working in intelligence use G as the sort of working definition of intelligence in a scientific sense.
And the really interesting thing, maybe even a bit controversial, is how predictive G is. IQ scores, measuring G, they're pretty significant predictors of how well people do in school, on the job. They even predict other things, like your chances of getting divorced or dropping out of high school.
It does raise uncomfortable questions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This idea that, Mother Nature's no egalitarian, as some put it, meaning people are just born with different levels of intellectual potential, much like physical traits like height.
Yeah, and that reality often clashes with our ideal that everyone should be born equally capable in every way.
And that very tension is likely why some researchers started thinking, okay, is G the whole story? Robert Sternberg was a key figure here. His triarchic theory of intelligence, proposed back in 1977 and fleshed out in 1985, suggested there isn't just one type of intelligence, but 3 distinct, though interconnected, types. He argued that just having a high G score, being book smart, didn't really capture everything that makes someone successful in the real world.
Okay, 3 types. So what are they? Break it down for us.
Right. So first, there's analytical intelligence. Sternberg also called it componential. This is the one that's most similar to traditional IQ. It's about your internal mental processes, analyzing information, solving problems, comparing and contrasting, judging ideas. Think academic problem solving, analogies, puzzles. It's like the processing power.
Okay, the book smarts part. What's number 2?
Number 2 is creative intelligence, or experiential. This is quite different. It's about insight, synthesis, reacting to new situations, coming up with novel solutions. It's how you connect your inner world to the outside reality, especially when faced with something new. Part of this is also automatization, getting so good at something it becomes automatic.
So adapting and inventing.
Yeah.
And the third one, you mentioned street smarts earlier.
That's practical intelligence or contextual intelligence. This is exactly the ability to grasp, understand, and deal effectively with everyday tasks. Street smarts is a good shorthand. Sternberg saw it as the skill set that lets people function in the real world. Solving practical problems by adapting to your environment, shaping it to suit your needs, or even selecting a different environment altogether.
Okay, this is where it gets really useful for people listening, I think. How can you tell if you have strong practical intelligence? If this is you, maybe you prefer learning by doing, not just reading books. You're good with tools. You enjoy solving real-world problems. You like putting ideas into action, applying knowledge right away. You're maybe an action taker.
That's a great description. We can see it in action in lots of ways. Think about someone who's really good at public relations. That often requires an almost intuitive grasp of how to shape perceptions, manage situations to get a certain result. That's practical intelligence. Or conflict resolution, understanding different viewpoints, staying impartial, finding workable solutions. Very practical.
Staying calm in emergencies, too.
Absolutely. That instinctive, adaptable reaction when things go wrong while others might panic, that's practical intelligence kicking in. Performing well in a job interview is another one. It's not just about knowing answers, it's reading the room, understanding the interviewer's goals, tailoring your responses.
It really sounds like a deep understanding of how things actually work, people and situations included.
Exactly. Skilled negotiation, too. You have to understand the rules, maybe the legal side, but also public opinion, the other party's mindset, and adapt your strategy constantly. Even a good customer service rep uses it, balancing company policy with customer needs, using empathy, calming people down.
It makes you think about jobs that might not seem intellectual in the traditional sense, but clearly require a high degree of this practical skill.
Definitely. Project managers, leading teams, juggling resources, adapting to constant changes. That's practical intelligence personified.
Yeah.
Or think about gamesmanship and sports winning by cleverly manipulating factors, pushing the rules without breaking them. That takes smarts. You see it in immigrant success stories, people arriving with little, figuring out how to survive, adapt, slowly build success by responding cleverly to their circumstances. And good coaches, analyzing opponents, making split-second decisions during a game, motivating players. That's all high-level practical intelligence. It's about making things work.
So, connecting this to the bigger picture again, Howard Gardner took this idea of diverse abilities even further, didn't he? With his theory of multiple intelligences. This feels like another big challenge to that single G factor idea. Gardner basically says intelligence comes in different packages. And he argued we're not just born with a fixed amount of intelligence, and crucially, people process information really differently.
That's right. Gardner's work, well, we'll get to the critiques later, was really influential, especially in education. It suggested maybe everyone is smart, just in different ways. He had specific criteria, though. For something to be a distinct intelligence, he argued, you needed evidence. Like, could brain damage isolate just that ability? Do we see savants or prodigies who excel in just one area? Is there a distinct developmental path? Experimental proof? Psychometric data?
So he wasn't just making a list of talents, he had a framework.
He did. He initially proposed 7 intelligences, then added an 8th and considered a 9th. Let's run through them, and as we do, maybe think about where you might fit in.
Yeah, listen for those aha moments, maybe something that resonates with you or someone you know.
Okay, first up, linguistic intelligence. High linguistic intelligence means you're comfortable with words speaking, writing, big vocabulary, enjoy reading, maybe word games. Languages might come easier too. Think careers like public speaker, journalist, lawyer, writer. Then, logical mathematical intelligence, good with numbers obviously, but also enjoy experiments, investigations, logic puzzles, strategy games, often curious about those deep abstract questions. Careers, mathematician, scientist, computer analyst, engineer.
Already quite different skill sets, and you mentioned people sometimes undervalue some of these, like music isn't real intelligence.
Exactly. Traditional schooling often emphasizes those first two. But Gardner says, hold on. Look at visual spatial intelligence. High awareness of your surroundings, good sense of direction, enjoy jigsaw puzzles or maps. Maybe you daydream visually, enjoy creative arts. Architects, graphic artists, pilots, interior decorators often score high here. Then musical intelligence. This is about sensitivity to pitch, rhythm, tone, timbre, recognizing patterns, creating music, maybe reflecting deeply on it. You might like background music. Be very sensitive to sounds generally. Conductors, musicians, composers, music therapists fit here. It's a complex cognitive skill, not just a hobby. How about bodily kinesthetic intelligence? Recognizing your body's abilities and limits. Good body language, comfortable with physical interaction, great timing in physical tasks. Dexterous with objects, maybe like crafting things with your hands. Think physical therapists, dancers, athletes, but also surgeons, carpenters.
It really drives home that intelligence isn't just mental calculation, it's embodied too. What about relating to others? Or ourselves?
Spot on. That brings us to interpersonal intelligence. This is about understanding other people, good at noticing differences between them. Maybe you have a wide circle of friends, comfortable meeting new people, good at sensing moods, seeing things from others' perspectives. HR folks, counselors, managers, teachers, social workers often need this. And its counterpart, intrapersonal intelligence. This is about understanding yourself, being self-motivated, strong-willed, independent, aware of your own feelings and acting on them, enjoying self-reflection, understanding your own strengths and weaknesses. Psychologists, writers, therapists, entrepreneurs, maybe poets often have this inner focus. Later in '95, Gardner added naturalistic intelligence. If this is you, you love nature, the outdoors. You connect easily with animals. Maybe you're good at gardening, raising pets, recognizing patterns in the natural world. Think botanists, oceanographers, geologists, landscape architects. And finally, he proposed existential intelligence as a potential ninth type. This is about tackling the big questions, the meaning of life, why we die, a sensitivity to deep matters of human existence. Maybe inspirational speakers, philosophers, theologians, some authors tap into this.
Okay, that's a lot of different ways to be smart. But I know there's a common confusion. Are these the same as learning styles, like being a visual learner?
That's a really important distinction. Gardner himself was quite clear. No, they are not the same. Learning styles usually refer to how you prefer to take in information visually, auditorily, kinesthetically. Gardner's intelligences are about distinct cognitive abilities, different ways your brain actually processes information and solves problems.
Got it. Abilities, not preferences.
Now, shifting slightly but relatedly, let's touch on emotional intelligence, EQ, and social intelligence, SQ. These have become huge topics, especially for success in the real world, particularly leadership. And they're seen as distinct from traditional IQ.
Right, EQ and SQ. Tell us about social intelligence first.
Okay, social intelligence, or SQ. This develops through experience interacting with people, learning from social successes, and, importantly, failures. People might call it tact, common sense, or even link it back to street smarts. It definitely overlaps with Sternberg's practical intelligence, but SQ is more specifically focused on navigating the social world effectively. High SQ means you're probably good in conversations, can adapt your communication style, play different social roles smoothly, you're likely a good listener, good at figuring out what makes people tick. You feel comfortable with diverse personalities and manage the impression you make.
So it's about social adeptness, reading people and situations.
Exactly. Now, emotional intelligence, EQ, is slightly different. It's more inward-looking initially, but also outward. It's the ability to identify and manage your own emotions, and also to recognize and influence the emotions of others. There are generally seen to be three main parts: being aware of emotions, yours and others, using emotions to help your thinking and problem solving, and managing emotions, regulating your own and helping regulate others.
And when you put EQ and SICQ together, you get ESI, emotional and social intelligence. And the big takeaway here, which is really empowering, is what?
The big takeaway is that unlike IQ, which many researchers feel is relatively stable or set in stone after a certain age, these ESI competencies, they can actually be learned, developed, and improved throughout your life. It's a skill set you can work on.
That's huge. So you're not just stuck with the EQ or SQ you have now.
Not at all. And to quickly distinguish them, Will Chow had a nice way of putting it. EQ is maybe more about the future, figuring out the best social strategy to get a good outcome, like how to give feedback without damaging a relationship. EQ is more about the present, reading someone's face right now to understand their emotional state, managing your immediate emotional reaction.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly positive and expansive, but there's a but, isn't there? Especially with Gardner's multiple intelligences. You hinted at critiques. It gets pretty contentious, actually. While these ideas are super popular, particularly in schools, the scientific community has pushed back. Hard. Some even call MI theory a neuromyth.
That's true. There's significant scientific debate. The main arguments against Gardner's theory as a robust scientific model boil down to a few key points. First, the lack of empirical evidence for independence. Remember, Gardner argued these intelligences were separate? Well, factor analysis studies statistical methods looking for correlations often find that measures of these supposed intelligences are actually correlated. If you score high on one, you might tend to score high on others too. That suggests they might not be truly independent. Maybe they still share some underlying factor, perhaps G.
So the data doesn't clearly show them as separate things.
Not as clearly as the theory proposes. Second big point, brain organization. Neuroscience over the last few decades gives us a different picture of the brain. It doesn't seem to be organized into neat, separate modules for language, music, spatial skills, etc., the way Gardner initially suggested based on the knowledge at the time. Instead, the brain seems to work through complex, interconnected networks. These networks are often multifunctional. They get recruited for lots of different tasks.
Like one brain area helps with both language and maybe complex tool use.
Something like that. There's this concept called exaptation, where existing brain circuits get repurposed for new skills. So the idea of dedicated intelligence modules doesn't fit well with current neuroscience.
Okay, lack of independence evidence, brain organization issues. What else?
The effectiveness of MI teaching strategies is also questioned. Lots of teachers believe these methods work, and they might see improvements in their classrooms. But critics argue those improvements might be due to other things we know work. More repetition, students paying more attention because it's novel, teachers giving more personal attention, or just teacher enthusiasm for the new method. Many studies claiming MI works lack rigorous scientific controls to rule out these other factors. It's hard to prove it's the MI part that's making the difference.
And testing them is hard too, right?
That's the final main point. No standard measures. There aren't widely accepted, reliable, standardized tests for most of Gardner's intelligences. Without good tests, it's incredibly difficult to scientifically validate the theory, compare results across studies, or even know if we're measuring what we think we're measuring.
So, summing up the criticism, the scientific evidence for truly separate intelligences housed independently in the brain just isn't really there, according to many researchers. And the teaching methods might work for other reasons.
That's the core of the scientific critique, yes. It highlights this real tension. The theory is intuitively appealing. It feels validating to recognize diverse strengths.
But the science demands rigorous proof, and many researchers feel that proof is lacking. They worry that focusing on MI might distract from finding teaching methods that are solidly evidence-based.
So if we zoom out and try to connect all these dots, it's crystal clear that intelligence is way more complicated than just one number on a test. That much seems certain. We've seen Sternberg emphasize that practical real-world ability, the street smarts. And Gardner, despite the scientific debates, really pushed us to broaden the definition, to consider this wide spectrum of abilities, even if their independence is questioned.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive, I think, really shows that whether you feel you're book smart, street smart, a people person, a creative type, whatever, there's so many ways to be intelligent, so many ways to bring value. Hopefully, understanding these different perspectives helps you appreciate your own unique mix of strengths and maybe gives you clues about how you best tackle challenges or learn new things. So the final thought to leave you with is this. Given these ongoing debates, especially around multiple intelligences, how does your own personal experience line up? When you think about how you learn, how you solve problems day to day, which of these ideas feels most true for you? What kind of intelligence feels most intuitive? And how might recognizing that, whatever it is, actually empower you moving forward?